welcome back to my channel. I don't know whether I'm going to post this on Instagram as well, but I might just do a little kind of post on there. But I am doing a rarity. I'm putting an extra video up this week, but I might be quiet for a while after this, because there's a lot to process. So this video is basically what happened at my colorectal surgical appointment that I was telling you about in my sigmoidoscopy video. And obviously I've posted a bit about what things I'm looking at talking about with my colorectal surgeon and things like that on my Instagram, so they'll get updated as well. But for those that have watched my sigmoidoscopy video, and I said that I would update to let you know what the outcome of my colorectal appointment was, this is why I'm here. So as you know, my appointment for this appointment particularly got cancelled. It was supposed to have been on the 1st of November and they ended up moving it. The doctor was lovely. It's very rare these days that we get a doctor that's so nice and willing to talk and answer your questions and listen. So I was very thankful that she was able to do that. Very lovely doctor, was able to help me and answer everything that I had worries about. She also confirmed a few things. So if you remember in my sigmoidoscopy video, I explained to you that I had a rectocele at 120-degree angle, which is obviously the most severe that you can get. And I also had a mucosal rectal prolapse. The doctor told me at the time that there is nothing that they can do for that because my tissues are too friable to hold the mesh in place that they would have to use to hold everything in. The stitches wouldn't hold and that mesh would basically just break away and it'll fall out. So there'd be no point putting me under an anaesthetic to do a surgery that chances are will most likely fail. It's like a 99.9% chance it will fail. And this doctor yesterday confirmed that that is not an option for me. So I did explain to her that I'd had a conversation with my irrigation nurse, and I'd explained about how my prolapse had gotten worse slightly because there's a certain part of it that every now and again will just stay out, and as much as I try and push it back, it'll just keep popping its little face out, and it starts to hurt. So I explained to her that this is what's happening now and it's only been a couple of months, so I'm really worried that things are progressing and it's just not going to be very helpful for me, because obviously they can't do the surgery to fix it. I'm looking at becoming incontinent at some point, and obviously the prolapse will just worsen as time goes on. So I explained to her that my irrigation nurse had mentioned that I would need to have a surgery, and I explained that I couldn't have the surgery to fix it and why. Because obviously I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and irritable bowel syndrome, so my tissues are too friable, especially with the faulty collagen, and it wouldn't hold the mesh in and stuff like that. And that she told me that that's not what she was talking about. She was talking about having a stoma fitted. And I told this doctor yesterday how kind of taken aback I was at the fact that this is probably going to be my reality. And she was nodding her head and she was like, yeah, stoma is likely, to be honest with you. She said, however, there is a few things that I want to do first, which is fine. So we just briefly spoke about stomas. She palpated my stomach because there is an area near my ileum, which is near the large intestine, as the large intestine starts, where I've had my appendix removed. And I get like a lot of pain there. Like it's almost like someone sticking a knife in my stomach a lot, especially after irrigation, or like, I don't know, it's like just really weird sometimes. So she decided to palpate my stomach to make sure that I didn't have things like a hernia or things like that. So I asked her could it be down to scar tissue. She said it could be. She said, and you can get a lot of scar tissue then. It could just be irritated because you might have air trapped behind there, because sometimes when you're getting stool build up, then you can get air trapped between the stool. And obviously there's a long way around from your lower right side to the to the bit where your poop comes out. She says, so, you know, it could just be a lot of airs there, and that's what's causing the problem. So we spoke about that, and she noticed that my scar for my appendectomy is quite a large scar, and it's quite wide. And she asked me, did I have any troubles with it? And I explained that my stitches had ruptured, and the doctors said that it was fine because it started to knit together on the inside, but on the outside it had ruptured open. And she went, I can tell that just by looking at it. I said, I have trouble healing from things anyway because of my EDS. And she said, okay. So we spoke about different types of stomas. Now, as you know, you can have an ileostomy or you can have a colostomy. Ileostomies are usually placed on the lower right side of your stomach because that's where your ileum is. And a colostomy is usually on the left side, I believe. The differences between the two for somebody who is tube fed is really, like, there's complications with both, with having Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, but for somebody who's tube fed, the option to do an ileostomy is not favorable. And the reason for this is because your large colon is responsible for taking any water out of digested food and basically making sure that that is dispersed in your kidneys or whatever, or around your body or wherever it's needed to go. And anything that's excess, that's left over, obviously gets fermented so that it forms stool, so then you can pass it as waste product into the toilet. If you have a tube that is basically being fed into your small intestine, which is in the jejunal area, because that is liquid and primarily liquid, and then obviously you put in flushes through and things like that, there is a higher risk of the fact that because you have an ileostomy and it is not going into your large colon, the fluid that you're pumping in will end up losing out on your body absorbing electrolytes and the amount of fluid your body needs to sustain itself. So you can become very dehydrated and have electrical imbalances because there's a high possibility of that. So although your small intestine basically does all of the absorbing and, you know, breaking down and things like that, it's actually the fluid from that is actually absorbed because of the large colon. So basically what she said was, if I'm being fed through my jejunal area, then basically what goes in, it's going to end up coming out, and I'm going to end up losing a lot of fluid than what I should be losing. So they usually opt not to do ileostomies for people who are tube fed. They will only really do the ileostomies if a colostomy is not an option. But just like an ileostomy, there are complications from having Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and having a colostomy placed. So a colostomy is basically instead of being the small intestine, it's the colon. And they'll basically like have the lower part of your colon protrude out of your stomach. And the risk from having EDS is the fact that you can then eventually end up with prolapse of the stoma. Or the stoma may try to retract back inside the abdominal cavity. And both of these things obviously need dealing with because it can cause strangulations and things like that. But they're all treatable, so that's helpful. She obviously said that a stoma would be permanent. It's not something that they will be able to change. It'll be a permanent fixture. However, because my colon will be left behind, or part of my colon will be left behind. All of my colon will be in my stomach, but obviously part of it will be sticking out my abdomen. The bit that's not sticking out of my abdomen will still produce air. It will still produce secretions. So I would have to deal with that on a regular basis as well, which is fine. She said in most cases, usually with cancer patients, we would naturally just try and seal up the anal passage. She said, however, because you have EDS, if we try to do that, especially with the fact that you still have a colon there, she said that could cause more problems and you probably end up with something called a stynus. She said, so that's not something that we would do. And to be quite frank with you guys, I honestly would not want my bum hole sewn up. I just think that I would literally have a bit of a freak out at the fact that I don't have a bum hole anymore. Like, that would literally freak me out. But the benefit of having a stoma over becoming incontinent and basically defecating and needing to be close to a toilet or waking up or needing to wear like nappies in bed or whatever, like, that's not something that I want to have to live by. Because if you think about it, you know, if I was to become incontinent, I wouldn't be able to go on holiday with my family. I wouldn't be able to go swimming. I wouldn't be able to go in the sea. I wouldn't be able to live my life the way I'd want to live my life. And I have to do physiotherapy in water to help with my hip issues. So that's something I would not be able to do. And then my hips just going to continue to get worse. So she said to me, like, it is highly likely that you probably will end up with a stoma, and it'll be more likely to be a colostomy. However, previous to this, she wants to do other things first. So although the idea of getting a stoma is kind of, you know, marked in wet concrete, it's not physically set in stone yet. So it's basically a case of it's there, and once we've done some other things to try, we'll then see if the concrete is going to set. And if the concrete then sets, then we know what's going forward. So basically, she wants to do what's known as a MRI proctogram. Now, for those people that don't know what an MRI proctogram is, I'm going to try and explain it to you. I've not had it yet, but from what I've read, I'm going to try and explain it to you. Okay, so they basically give you a contrast to either drink or, you know, to basically show up the rest of your colon, basically. So they may put it down my NJ tube, or if I've got my PEG-J by then, they might put it down my jejunal port, because obviously I can't drink a lot and I'd probably end up bringing it back, which is not something that they want me doing. And then they also use like a paste or which has contrast in it, or like an enema type thing that they will basically then squeeze up the other end. And they will sit you on what's known as a plastic toilet, and they will have an MRI machine which will then be on either side of the mobile toilet, which is plastic, obviously, because it can't be metal because it's a magnetic machine. And they will have you sat on it while you go to the bathroom. They basically ask you to squeeze, and then they'll ask you to bear down if though you're doing a Valsalva maneuver, or, you know, trying to have a full bowel movement, and to basically like do whatever you need to do to get that paste out. I'm very toilet shy, so, and I said this to her yesterday, I was like, I'm very toilet shy. I honestly do not like doing number twos outside of my own home. I'm even funny doing number twos when I've got people in my own house that live here, because I'm frightened that they're going to hear it, or, you know, I might make a smell or whatever. But obviously I've got a little bit better at that, because obviously I've got to do irrigation now. But it's like, I don't go to the toilet in other people's homes. You know, I very rarely go in my mum's house, and I certainly don't do number twos in disabled toilets or in a supermarket toilet or anything like that. I've never done it. Well, that's a bit of an understatement. I have done it, but only when it's been absolutely necessary. So things like when my IBS has flared and I've got no other option, because obviously I will need to get to a bathroom quickly if that happens. But other than that, I try my best so much not to go to the bathroom. Like, if I went on a 2-week holiday, I would be very uncomfortable towards the end of the 2 weeks, because of the fact that I would choose not to go to the bathroom while I'm there. That is how shy I am. So to kind of go and do a proctogram while there's several MRI staff watching what I'm doing is quite embarrassing, but it needs to be done. The proctogram will basically show them any weaknesses in my bowel, where the problems lie, and then decide whether or not the best option then would be to fit a colostomy. And every time we mentioned stomas yesterday, she was like nodding her head if they'd say like, this is where we're going to be going. But obviously we want to try and do, you know, non-surgical things first. So she's going to run this test and then we'll go from there. So like I said, the concrete is wet. The idea of a stoma has been written in it. It's just not set in stone completely yet. But like I said, I can't physically have the other surgery. And as much as I would, you know, I'm not saying that stomas are bad things, but as much as I'm not looking forward to having one, the alternative to not having one is not something I want to go through. I've already been through therapy from not being able to go out of my house. So I don't want to get into that point again. I want to move forward. So if a stoma is what's needed, then a stoma is what I'll get. So yeah, that's pretty much where we are at. So stretches, laxatives, irrigation is what I'm got to continue doing. And then obviously have this MRI proctogram, and then we'll take it from there. When I know more about anything else, I will let you guys know. But as you can imagine, having to get your head around the fact that this tube is going to be placed in my abdomen, which is also known as a stoma, as a PEG J tube, and then realizing that, you know, at some point there's a very high, like 98% chance that I'm going to end up needing to have a colostomy fitted as well. It's a lot for me to get my head around, on top of everything else that I've got going on health-wise. So if I'm quiet online for a few days, even on my Instagram or whatever, then, you know, it's just me trying to process everything. And obviously on top of that, I'm doing therapy right now for something completely different. But I've got a lot on, but I promised an update. So this is my update. And I hope that you guys can understand a little bit more now about stuff. But yeah, it is looking likely that a colostomy will be needed. But like I said, I'll keep you guys posted every step of the way so that you know what's going on. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you want further content, don't forget you need to subscribe to my channel. You can always message me or DM me on my Instagram or down below. You can always follow me on Instagram as well. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your support. I hope you've enjoyed this update. And yeah, thank you. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye, guys.